I never imagined that my life would take a turn like this. My name is Greg, and I've been married to my wife, Linda, for nearly a decade. At first, it felt like we had it all figured out. We had a nice house in a safe neighborhood, a decent income, and a circle of friends that included a tight-knit group of golf buddies. Life was good, or so I thought. Things started to change last summer. Linda became more distant. It was subtle at first, just a few extra hours at work and a little more time spent with her friends. I noticed she was always glued to her phone, texting and giggling at things I couldn't see. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off, saying it was nothing. Just work stuff, she'd say with a dismissive wave of her hand. I wanted to believe her, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. Then came the worst day of my life. I remember it vividly. It was a Friday, and I had just finished a great round of golf with my friends, including my buddy Mike. On the drive home, I felt accomplished. Maybe a bit cocky, thinking of how I had beaten Mike by several strokes. As I parked in the driveway, I saw Linda's car in the garage. Strange, I thought. She usually didn't get home until after 6. I walked into the house, calling out for her. No answer. I checked the kitchen and living room, but she was nowhere to be found. Before I could even think, I heard something, a muffled laughter coming from our bedroom. My heart raced and I crept down the hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last. I pushed the door slightly open, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Linda was there, tangled up with none other than Mike, my best friend, the guy I trusted with everything. They didn't see me at first, too caught up in their own world of infidelity. The sight of them together hit me like a punch to the gut. It was like time had frozen and the room spun around me. I backed away slowly, trying to process what I had just witnessed. The world came crashing down when I finally made it outside. I couldn't breathe or think straight. The betrayal felt like a tidal wave sweeping away everything I thought I knew about my life. I had trusted Mike and I had loved Linda. How could she do this to me? I was furious, heartbroken, and utterly confused. The next few hours were a blur. I wandered around town, calling friends and pretending everything was fine. I went to a bar, ordered a drink, and tried to calm the storm inside me. My mind raced through memories of our life together, the good times overshadowed by this one devastating moment. I finally headed home, steeling myself for what was to come. I knew I had to confront Linda. When I walked through the door, she was there, looking guilty but still trying to play it cool. I didn't even give her a chance to speak. I blurted out what I saw, letting the words spill out like a dam bursting. Her reaction was unbelievable. She laughed at first, thinking I was joking. When she realized I was serious, her expression shifted. She quickly tried to spin her way out of it. "It wasn't what it looked like, Greg. You have to believe me," she pleaded, but I didn't want to hear more excuses. I was done with the lies. I confronted her, asking for the truth, needing to know how she could betray me so easily. Linda tried everything to justify her actions, claiming it was just a fling, just a mistake. "We were caught up in the moment," she said, her tone almost condescending. I felt my anger boil over. How could she minimize what had just happened? The confrontation spiraled into a shouting match, filled with accusations and tears. I felt like I was losing a part of myself with every word. The emotional impact was overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning in despair. The trust we built felt shattered, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken heart. As I left the house that night, I was filled with a sense of rage and betrayal. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let this slide. I had to make a decision about what came next, and somewhere deep inside, I knew it wouldn't end well for either of them. I was determined to show them that their actions had consequences. The days that followed were a blur of confusion, anger, and pain. I found myself alternating between fury and despair, replaying the confrontation in my mind over and over again. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Linda and Mike together, laughing, whispering sweet nothings, and sharing moments that were supposed to be ours. It infuriated me. How could they be so careless with the love we built? It felt like a cruel joke, one that I was destined to be the punchline of. I started distancing myself from both of them and avoided hanging out with our mutual friends. It hurt too much to be around them, especially knowing Mike would be there. The golf course, which used to be my sanctuary, felt like a battlefield. Each time I picked up my clubs, I could practically see him standing there, smirking as if he hadn't just stabbed me in the back. I didn't want to confront Linda again just yet. I needed time to sort out my emotions. Instead, I began to formulate a plan, one that was far from noble. My mind was racing with thoughts of revenge. I wanted Mike to feel the same sting of betrayal that I felt, and I knew just how to do it. Over the next few weeks, I carefully began to execute my plan. I started spending more time on the golf course, not just to play, but to observe. I watched Mike's games, took note of his weaknesses, and began to study his playing style. I knew from our past games that he had a bit of an ego, and I intended to use that against him. I also began to practice my own game relentlessly. I developed a routine, hitting the driving range every day after work, focusing on my swing, my putting, everything. I wanted to dominate the game the next time we played together. I pictured the look on Mike's face when I beat him. I envisioned his confusion, his discomfort. Each victory would be a small slice of revenge that would taste oh so sweet. Eventually, the day came when I felt ready to confront Mike on the course again. We had a scheduled round with a few other guys, and I was filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety. I arrived early, practicing my putting while I waited for the others to show up. As the sun rose, I steeled myself for the match ahead. When Mike arrived, he seemed oblivious, his usual cocky demeanor intact. He greeted me with a casual wave, but I could see a flicker of guilt in his eyes. The game started off standard enough. I played my best, but I let Mike get a few early wins on purpose. I wanted him to feel comfortable, to think he had me figured out. Little did he know, I had a few tricks up my sleeve. As the game progressed, I made some impressive shots, sending a clear message that I wasn't going to roll over for him. With each hole, I noticed Mike getting more frustrated. I could see his frustration boiling over, especially as I sank a long putt on the seventh hole, taking the lead for the first time. He started to lose focus, and I seized the opportunity. I taunted him just enough to make him angrier, but always in a way that seemed like friendly banter to anyone else. By the time we reached the final hole, I was 2 strokes ahead of him. I stood on the tee, feeling an adrenaline rush. I glanced over at Mike, who was visibly sweating, his usual confidence replaced by desperation. As I took my swing, I felt a sense of satisfaction that I hadn't felt in weeks. The ball sailed beautifully down the fairway, and I knew I had him right where I wanted him. When we reached the green, I could sense the tension in the air. Mike took a deep breath, preparing to sink his putt. He missed, and I couldn't help but let out a small laugh. He glared at me, the irritation palpable. I stepped up next, and with all the focus I could muster, I sank my putt, sealing my victory. As I walked off the green, I felt a rush of triumph. It wasn't just about winning the game. It was about reclaiming my power after everything that had happened. Mike, on the other hand, was fuming. I could see him replaying the events of the game in his mind, searching for an explanation that wouldn't put the blame on himself. I savored every moment of his frustration, knowing that each victory was a small step toward healing my own wounds. Mike would have to learn to deal with this defeat, and I was more than happy to make sure he understood the cost of betrayal. That evening, as I reflected on the day, I felt a sense of clarity. I was taking control of my life again, and it felt good. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. I needed to plan my next steps carefully, not just on the golf course, but in my life. It was time to ensure that both Linda and Mike understood that actions have consequences. I had a long way to go, but I was more than ready for the challenge. After that first victory over Mike, I found a strange sense of solace in the routine I had created. Each match became a new opportunity for me to dominate, reclaiming parts of myself that I felt were lost in the wake of Linda's betrayal. I was relentless on the golf course, practicing day and night, working on my skills and plotting my next moves. With every swing, I felt more empowered and my confidence grew, much to the detriment of Mike. The weeks rolled by, and I continued to beat Mike consistently. With each game, I could see his frustration building as he struggled to maintain his composure. He began to throw his clubs in anger, and I could tell it was eating away at him. I proudly wore my victories like badges of honor, knowing that they symbolized not just my prowess on the course, but the emotional toll of what I was going through. As for Linda, I started confronting her in small ways, not giving her the satisfaction of knowing that I was hurting as deeply as I was. I maintained a facade of calm. When she called, I answered with indifference, keeping conversations strictly about logistics, bills, groceries, and the mundane aspects of life. I refused to engage in discussions about feelings or the state of our marriage. I felt like a chess player, making strategic moves while she remained blissfully unaware of my inner game plan. But then, one evening, Linda cornered me when I returned home from a particularly grueling round with Mike. I could see the determination in her eyes as she had clearly been waiting for me. "We need to talk, Greg," she said, her tone serious. I braced myself, knowing this moment was inevitable. I had anticipated it, but I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me was still angry and hurt, but another part of me felt strangely vindicated. "About what? You've made it clear where we stand," I shot back, trying to maintain my composure. She shifted uncomfortably, looking down at her hands. "I know I messed up. I made a horrible mistake and I want to fix it. I want us to work through this," she pleaded, her voice wavering. I couldn't help but scoff. "You think you can just come back from that? You think I'm just going to forgive and forget because you feel guilty now?" The anger was bubbling up again and I could feel my pulse quickening. "Greg, please, I love you. I made a mistake with Mike and it meant nothing." She insisted, her desperation palpable. "It was just sex." Her words stung like a slap across the face. "Just sex? Is that supposed to make it better? You humiliated me, Linda. You betrayed my trust with my best friend." I thundered, my voice rising. The weight of her infidelity hung heavy in the air, and I could feel the walls closing in around us. I watched as she tried to hold back tears, but I wasn't ready for sympathy. "You want me to forgive you? How can I even begin to trust you again? You threw away everything we built for a fling that didn't mean anything to you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I felt like I was fighting against a tidal wave of emotion. Linda took a step closer, reaching out to touch my arm. "I know I hurt you and I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll go to counseling, whatever it takes." "Stop," I interrupted, my voice cold and firm. "It's too late for that. You've made your choices and now you have to live with the consequences." She looked defeated, her shoulders slumped as she stepped back. There was no more fight left in her. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness, but I also felt a flicker of power. I was reclaiming my narrative and it felt good. After that encounter, I directed my focus back to my revenge. I wanted to ensure Mike knew that his defeat was no fluke. I began to plant doubts in his mind, subtly mocking his performance in a friendly manner. "You're slipping, Mike. You used to nail those drives every time. What's up?" I'd say with a feigned concern that only teased him further. I began to share my growing skills with the other guys in our group. It wasn't just about winning against Mike. It was about establishing a reputation. I wanted everyone to see me as the one who had come back from heartbreak to rise up, while Mike became the guy who lost his edge after crossing a line. As the weeks went on, Mike started to withdraw from our group. I could see it was getting to him. He avoided making plans and began to skip games. I was secretly thrilled. The more isolated he became, the more satisfaction I derived from his suffering. I knew he was feeling the heat and it fueled my desire for revenge even more. One Saturday, as I prepared for another match, I felt a wave of anticipation wash over me. Mike had agreed to play again, his first time back in weeks. I could sense the tension in the air as I arrived at the course. He was there, but he looked off his game, nervous. Perhaps he knew what to expect. As we teed off, I could feel the thrill of competition in my veins. I wasn't just playing for fun. I was playing for my pride, for my dignity, and for the sense of justice I so desperately craved. I was ready to deliver one more crushing blow to Mike, not just in this game, but to show both him and Linda that betrayal would not go unpunished. It was time to take this game to the next level and let them know that their actions had consequences. The day of the match arrived and I prepared myself both mentally and physically. The sun was shining and the course looked pristine. It was the perfect day for golf, and I felt a pulse of excitement coursing through me. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed Mike already warming up on the driving range, his posture tight, a sign of the pressure weighing on him. I couldn't help but smirk. I was ready to exploit every ounce of his insecurity. As we gathered with the rest of our friends, I made sure to engage everyone while letting Mike simmer in his anxiety. I cracked jokes, shared stories of my recent successes, and played the role of the confident golfer. My buddies were eager to hear about the games I had won, and I reveled in their admiration while glancing at Mike, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. When we finally teed off, the tension was palpable. I could sense Mike's frustration mounting, especially when I pulled off an incredible drive on the first hole that landed cleanly on the fairway, far ahead of his shot. It was a small victory, but in my mind, it was symbolic of everything that had transpired. I felt as if I was gaining momentum, not just in the game, but in my quest for revenge. As we continued through the course, I played strategically. I focused on my strengths while taking calculated risks, knowing that Mike was desperate to regain control. On the third hole, he made a crucial mistake, a slice that sent his ball into the rough. I couldn't help but smile. The more he struggled, the more I felt empowered. It was a twisted sense of satisfaction that kept me going. By the time we reached the back nine, I was 3 strokes ahead of him. The pressure was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I could see Mike's frustration boiling over. He began to lash out, blaming everything from the weather to his equipment. "This course is rigged. I swear you're getting lucky," he muttered after I sunk a challenging putt on the 8th hole. I chuckled, feigning surprise. "Luck? Nah, Mike, it's just skill. Maybe you should practice a bit more," I teased, enjoying every moment of his unraveling. My friends laughed, fueling the fire. I could see the anger bubbling beneath his skin, and it felt glorious. However, as I stood on the 15th tee, ready to take my shot, I sensed a shift in the atmosphere. Mike was quiet, too quiet. I glanced over and he looked completely defeated, a shadow of his former confident self. It occurred to me that perhaps I had pushed him too far. But then again, I reminded myself of what he had done. He deserved this. I took my shot, and the ball soared beautifully through the air, landing perfectly on the green. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I walked toward the hole. As I approached, I noticed Mike standing still, staring at his ball, which had landed in the bunker. The frustration on his face was palpable, and I realized I was close to breaking him completely. "Hey Mike, you okay?" I called out, more mockingly than concerned. "Need a shovel for that sand trap." He shot me a look that could kill. "Shut up, Greg," he snapped, his voice strained. It was clear that my taunts were getting under his skin, and that was just what I wanted. As we continued the game, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of something significant. I had taken my revenge, but a part of me wondered whether this was enough to mend my broken heart. Would crushing Mike truly heal the wounds Linda had inflicted? I pushed those thoughts aside. Right then, my focus was on the game. Finally, we reached the 18th hole. I was 4 strokes ahead, and the sense of victory washed over me. I was on the cusp of claiming my ultimate revenge. As I lined up for my final putt, I could feel the weight of the moment. My friends were cheering, but all I could see was Mike's face, twisted in frustration and defeat. I sunk the ball into the hole, and the cheers erupted around me. I raised my arms in triumph, basking in the glory of my win. Mike stood in disbelief, and for a moment I reveled in the spectacle of his humiliation. But then something shifted within me. The victory felt hollow. Yes, I had beaten Mike, but it didn't erase the pain Linda's betrayal had caused. I had sought revenge, but in doing so, I had also lost a piece of myself. It became clear that while I was winning on the golf course, I wasn't actually healing from the emotional turmoil that had engulfed my life. As we packed up, Mike walked up to me, his expression unreadable. I braced for a confrontation, but instead he simply shook his head. "You know, I used to think we were friends, Greg," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I guess I was wrong." His words hit me harder than I expected. I had wanted him to feel pain, to suffer as I had. But seeing him like this, stripped of confidence and pride, made me reconsider my actions. I had always viewed our friendship as sacred, and now it felt tainted. Yeah, Mike, maybe we both made mistakes, I replied, my voice softer than I intended. But maybe we can learn from this. He nodded, looking down at his shoes, the weight of reality settling in. In that moment, I realized that while I had sought revenge, I had also recognized the humanity in both of us. We were both flawed, both hurt, and perhaps we could find a way to move forward, if not as friends, then at least as two men who had endured the same storm. That night as I lay in bed, I found it hard to sleep. The exhilaration of victory faded, replaced by a deep sense of emptiness. I thought of Linda, of my marriage, and all the dreams that now felt like a distant memory. I had won the game, but at what cost? I knew I had to confront Linda again. I needed to address what had happened between us, to find a resolution that went beyond golf and petty revenge. There was no escaping the reality of our situation, and it was time for me to face it head-on. I needed to find a path forward, and I owed it to myself to seek closure, not just from my marriage but also from the friendship that had shattered alongside it. It was time to take the next step. The following days were filled with a mix of reflection and anxiety as I contemplated how to confront Linda again. I realized that my quest for revenge had given me a temporary sense of power and control, but it hadn't filled the void left by her betrayal. I knew I needed to sit down and have a serious conversation with her, to lay everything on the table. It was time to either find a way to move forward together or to finally sever the ties that had been stretched thin by her choices. I decided on a Saturday afternoon to confront her. I knew she would be home, and I felt that waiting for her to come to me would only prolong the inevitable. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but I also knew that emotions often took over in these situations. I took a deep breath and steeled myself as I walked into the house. Linda was in the living room scrolling through her phone. When she saw me, her expression shifted. "Greg," she said, looking almost hopeful, "can we talk?" "Yeah, we need to," I replied, my voice steady. I gestured for her to sit down, and as I took my place across from her, I felt a surge of determination mixed with trepidation. This was it. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," I started, trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "You and Mike, you know how much that hurt me, right?" She nodded, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "I can't express how sorry I am, Greg. I messed up in ways I can't even begin to describe. It was a moment of weakness and I should have never let it happen. I love you and I want to fix this." Her words felt rehearsed, as if she was trying to sell me a story I wasn't ready to believe. "Love is more than just words, Linda. You had a choice and you made the wrong one," I replied, keeping my tone even but firm. "I need to know the truth about what you felt, not just about what you think I want to." Here, she shifted in her seat, looking down at her hands. "It was never about love with Mike. It was about feeling alive, about escaping the routine. I was stupid and selfish, and I realize now how much I've hurt you." I rubbed my temples, trying to process her words. "You think that an excuse is going to fix this? You can't just say you're sorry and expect me to forget everything that's happened. Trust doesn't come back overnight." "I know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I want to work on it. I'm willing to go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild our marriage. Just give me a chance." The desperation in her eyes made it hard for me to remain indifferent. I was torn between the lingering love I felt for her and the betrayal that still cut deep. "What makes you think I can just trust you again? I've seen how quickly you can throw away our life together for a fling." "I know I don't deserve your trust," she said, her voice breaking. "But I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I can earn it back. I don't want to lose you, Greg. I can't imagine my life without you." Her words struck a chord, but they also fueled my internal conflict. I was angry at her for putting me in this position while simultaneously feeling a flicker of compassion. Still, anger was my armor. "You need to understand something, Linda. You've shattered my perception of our life together. I need to protect myself from being hurt again. If we're going to do this, it's going to take time. It's not going to be easy. I'm willing to put in the work," she assured me, her tone now more earnest. "I just need you to be open to the possibility of reconciliation. We can go together to counseling, talk through everything, but you have to meet me halfway." I exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the moment. "I'll think about it," I said finally, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. I wanted to believe her, but the reality of the situation made it hard. As I left the room, I felt a mix of hope and skepticism. Over the next few days, I mulled over our conversation. I found myself reflecting on the good times we had shared, the reasons I fell in love with her in the first place. But those memories were often clouded by the sting of betrayal. I wanted to believe that we could fix things, but fear lingered in the back of my mind. I started seeing a therapist myself, someone who could help me navigate my feelings. In our sessions, I began to unpack the complexity of my emotions. I felt anger, sadness, and confusion, but I also realized that some part of me still wanted to salvage our relationship. I eventually agreed to attend counseling with Linda, but I made it clear that I wasn't ready to jump back into anything. I needed time, and I wouldn't settle for anything less than complete honesty and transparency moving forward. As we began therapy, the sessions were both illuminating and challenging. We faced uncomfortable truths and had discussions that made me confront my own vulnerabilities. I wanted to be strong, to stand my ground, but I also wanted to understand how we could rebuild the bridge that had been burned. Things began to shift slowly, but there were still moments where I felt the familiar pangs of distrust. Linda worked hard to demonstrate her commitment. She apologized repeatedly, and I could see her efforts to change, but breaking down the walls I had built was no easy task. Meanwhile, I maintained my resolve to keep playing golf, using it as an outlet for my frustrations and a way to reclaim my sense of self. It had become a cathartic experience, helping me channel my emotions in a more constructive manner. And while my rivalry with Mike simmered down, I knew that the consequences of his actions still lingered in our circles. The path to healing was long and fraught with uncertainty, but as I navigated through the complexities of my feelings, I began to see a glimmer of hope. Perhaps there was a chance for reconciliation, but it would require effort from both of us. Trust needed to be rebuilt, and forgiveness had to be earned. In the end, I realized that while I had sought revenge, the true power lay in my ability to forgive, not just Linda, but myself as well. I knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it. The question remained whether Linda and I could truly come out stronger on the other side. Only time would tell. As the weeks turned into months, the landscape of my life began to shift. I continued attending therapy with Linda, and while the process was arduous, it felt as though we were both genuinely invested in the journey to rebuild our relationship. Each session revealed layers of emotion that we hadn't previously addressed. It was uncomfortable, but I realized that facing these issues head-on was necessary for our growth. Linda opened up about her feelings of inadequacy and the pressures she felt, both from our marriage and her own insecurities. I discovered that her infidelity was less about me and more about her own struggles with self-worth and identity. It was disheartening to learn that she had felt the need to seek validation outside our marriage, but it also provided me with a greater understanding of her actions. In turn, I shared my feelings of betrayal, anger, and confusion. I spoke about the moments I had felt most hurt, how her actions shattered my trust and made me question everything I had believed about us. The therapy sessions became a safe space for both of us to express our pain and frustration, but also to explore the possibility of forgiveness. As time passed, we began to see small improvements in our communication. I noticed genuine efforts on Linda's part to show her commitment. She would leave sweet notes for me, cook my favorite meals, and initiate thoughtful conversations about our future. I could see her trying to make amends, and while progress was slow, it felt meaningful. I also leaned on my golf game as a means of finding balance amidst the chaos. I found solace in the routine of practicing and playing, using it as a way to clear my mind. It became a tool for regaining my confidence and independence. I still played against Mike, and while the rivalry remained, I felt less consumed by anger. In fact, I learned to acknowledge that my victories on the course were no longer about revenge, but rather about proving to myself that I could rise above the pain. One Saturday afternoon, as I played around with some friends, I found myself reflecting on how much I had grown since the infidelity. I realized that I had moved from being solely focused on Mike's downfall to embracing my own journey of healing. The game itself became a metaphor for life. Sometimes we hit great shots, sometimes we miss, but it's about how we respond that truly matters. Eventually, Linda and I reached a pivotal moment in therapy when we discussed the concept of rebuilding trust. Our therapist encouraged us to establish new rituals and routines that would strengthen our bond. We started going on regular date nights, exploring new activities together, things we had neglected over the years. We even joined a local book club, which became a fun way to connect outside of our usual routine. There were still challenges ahead. The shadows of the past lingered, but rather than letting them control us, we chose to address them openly. There were tough conversations about boundaries and expectations, but we faced them together. It was a continuous process that required patience and understanding. One day, during a particularly candid therapy session, Linda turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I know I can't change the past, but I want you to know how much I regret my actions. I'm so grateful that you're still here, that we're still trying," she said, her voice breaking. In that moment, I felt a shift within myself. I realized that I was no longer stuck in the anger and resentment that had consumed me. Instead, I felt a sense of peace beginning to wash over me. I nodded, acknowledging her words. "I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I want to keep trying too." Our journey toward healing was not linear. There were ups and downs, moments of doubt and times of clarity. But with each step we took, I felt the weight of the past begin to lift. I started to see Linda not just as the woman who betrayed me, but as a partner who was willing to fight for our future. One evening, as we sat on the couch together, sharing a bottle of wine, I looked at her and felt a sense of gratitude. "You know, I didn't think we would make it after everything," I admitted. "I thought the betrayal would define us." Linda gave me a small smile. "So did I, but we've proven that we're stronger than our mistakes. We're not perfect, but we're trying. And that's what matters." I raised my glass, meeting her gaze. "To trying," I said, and we clinked our glasses together, the sound resonating like a hopeful promise. In the end, I learned that while revenge had given me temporary satisfaction, it was ultimately forgiveness and commitment that would lead to true healing. I realized that life is about more than just winning. It's about connection, understanding, and the willingness to evolve. As I reflect on this journey, I have come to understand that healing is a process, and it takes time. I'm grateful for the lessons learned, both on and off the golf course. While the scars of betrayal will always be a part of my story, they no longer define me. I'm moving forward, ready to embrace whatever comes next, together with Linda, as partners striving to build a stronger foundation and a renewed relationship. And perhaps one day, Mike and I can find some semblance of friendship again. But for now, I'm focusing on what truly matters: my life, my healing, and the future I'm determined to create.